December 17, 1969. NBC's Studio 6B in New York. The stage lights ran hot against the winter outside. The air held the faint residue of cigarette smoke and hot cables. And somewhere above the bandstand, the applause sign did its quiet work, ordering feeling, cueing laughter, shaping silence. Behind a polished desk, its surface cleared like a promise, Johnny Carson glanced down, then up, and the room settled into the peculiar calm that only live television can manufacture, a calm made of schedules, rehearsals, and the knowledge that none of it can stop the next minute from arriving. The desk was not decoration, it was architecture. It divided host from guest, power from petition, public ease from private calculation. For 3 decades, America would learn to read that desk
The myth of Carson as an unshakable master of ceremonies was built partly on the impression that he could absorb any disturbance and return the broadcast to equilibrium. The Library of Congress materials underline how much was scripted, pre-interviewed, reviewed, annotated, how the air of improvisation was itself a carefully maintained illusion. There were standards reports, outlines, corrections, deletions, and a machinery of control designed to make spontaneity look effortless. But the disturbance was never only the guest. The disturbance was the possibility, always present in live television, that the audience might glimpse the machinery. On that December night in 1969, the public expectation was not tension, it was novelty. Tiny Tim, odd, falsetto, ukulele in hand, had become a counterculture curiosity brought into the mainstream, and the show had leaned into the spectacle. A wedding, performed on a late-night talk show, officiated in front of a national audience. What viewers expected was safe strangeness, a controlled oddity packaged as an event. What they got was something subtler and more difficult to categorize, an unsettling collision of sincerity and publicity, intimacy and performance, a private ritual staged under studio lights. The Television Academy Foundation's account frames the wedding as a pop culture moment, rooted in a casual on-air suggestion that became reality, an example of how The Tonight Show could turn a passing remark into a national event. That's the key. Carson did not need to demand. The desk did not need to threaten. Influence could be exercised as an offhand idea, spoken rightly, and then carried out by everyone around him as if it had always been the plan. This is one of the show's most revealing truths. The most powerful moments often began as jokes. Late-night authority was built on the ability to treat serious things as if they were not serious, until they were. The wedding did not explode in chaos. It didn't need to. The disturbance was conceptual. It asked the audience to watch a human commitment and a ratings event at the same time, to clap on cue at something normally marked by family silence. The applause sign, impersonal, bright, insistent, became the hidden officiant. In a studio, even tenderness has a time slot. The transformation that followed was not limited to Tiny Tim's career or the novelty's afterlife. It reinforced a deeper public understanding that Carson's desk could absorb anything, politics, celebrity, vulnerability, and render it into shared experience. The desk did not merely host conversations, it converted private life into national material without appearing cruel. It made the conversion look like hospitality. This is where the disturbing guest idea becomes more historically accurate if we widen the lens. The most unsettling Tonight Show moments were not always the ones with shouting, or visible intoxication, or a guest who refused to cooperate. The unsettling moments were the ones where the show's calm revealed itself as a form of power. The Library of Congress essay on the Carson archives describes how almost everything was structured. Coordinators, pre-interviews, questions prepared with probable answers, tapings with time for review and censoring before broadcast. This was not the Wild West. It was a controlled environment designed to make control invisible. And yet, guests still arrived with their own motives. Some carried volatility as an act. Some carried it as a symptom. Some carried it as a kind of protest against the very format they had agreed to enter. The desk received them all the same way, steady, polished, waiting. If the guest wanted to seize the room, the desk asked a quiet question: who owns the frame?
Even when the guest was a friend, that tension could be played as ritual combat. Don Rickles, for example, was not disturbing in the sensational sense. He was disturbing because insult comedy threatens the social order that talk shows depend on. It turns politeness into material, and it tempts the audience to enjoy cruelty as intimacy. Yet Carson welcomed him repeatedly, and their relationship became a demonstration of how the desk could permit controlled disrespect without losing authority. The host could be attacked and still remain the host. The audience could laugh and still feel safe. One of the most telling moments described in that Vulture retrospective is when Carson abandons the desk entirely, walking into Rickles' studio with a handheld microphone after a prop was broken on a previous show. It reads as spontaneity, but it also reads as a reminder. The desk is not the source of power. Carson is. He can leave it, and the hierarchy follows him. The desk, in those moments, becomes symbolic in the way all enduring television objects become symbolic. It represents an illusion of ease behind relentless precision. It suggests that the nation's nightly ceremony is informal, when it is, in fact, engineered. It suggests that the host is simply there, when he is also the final editor of the room's emotional temperature. And this is the quieter intimidation of Carson's world, rarely spoken aloud, but consistently felt by those who entered it. Appearing on The Tonight Show could make a career, and therefore it could also withhold something. The desk was the threshold. To be invited was to be legitimized. To be mishandled was to be exposed. To be unwelcome was to vanish from the most important stage in American entertainment. That is why the word disturbing belongs less to any one guest than to the system itself, a system where performance and authenticity were constantly negotiated under studio lights, where the audience trusted a man precisely because he did not demand emotional intimacy, and where the nation's shared experience was curated by a host whose greatest talent was making curation feel like conversation. Carson's biographical portrait emphasizes how he remained seductive by remaining partly unknowable, always there, never graspable. That dynamic mattered on nights when guests brought too much of themselves, or too little, or something raw that did not translate cleanly into a segment. Carson could allow a moment of humanity, rare, controlled, unforgettable, then return to the desk and resume the nation's bedtime ritual. The authority was invisible because it was consistent. The transformation America underwent in those years, 1960s turbulence into 1970s disillusionment into 1980s glossy certainty, played nightly in miniature on late-night television. The desk remained. The format remained. The country changed around it. And perhaps that was the point. The desk offered continuity in an era when continuity felt scarce. In the end, the moments that went off the rails are remembered because they threatened the illusion that the rails were natural. The rails were built by producers, by standards reports, by rehearsals, by the physical hierarchy of furniture. They were maintained by the host's restraint and by a national appetite for being guided gently into sleep. That is the emotional philosophy beneath the mythology. Performance versus authenticity was not a debate conducted in speeches. It was a nightly negotiation enacted in posture, timing, tone. A guest could arrive believing charisma alone would carry them. Some learned that charisma is not power in that room. Framing is. The desk framed everything. It made the guest visible. It made the host permanent. And the audience, millions, night after night, trusted Johnny Carson not because he was sentimental, but because he was controlled. In a medium built on volatility, he offered steadiness. In a culture anxious about change, he offered ritual. In a nation that wanted to believe it could look at itself honestly without losing composure, he offered laughter that felt like composure. May 21, 1992, his final Tonight Show, would be remembered for its restraint as well. The the closing that did not ask for nostalgia and did not indulge in spectacle. The Library of Congress account notes one of the rare personal references, the mention of his son, Rick. Even then, it was measured, emotion acknowledged, not displayed. Then he was gone, and the desk remained as an empty symbol for whoever came next. But the larger truth is quieter. Television, at its most powerful, is not the loudest moment, it is the shared moment. Millions of separate rooms synchronized for an hour, trusting the same cues, the same laugh, the same sense of what matters. The Tonight Show in the Carson era functioned as a nightly confirmation that the country could still gather around a single voice and feel, without speaking, the same things at the same time. And when the guest was disturbing, when something didn't fit, when sincerity and performance collided, when the audience sensed the machinery, the desk was still there, polished, waiting, pretending to be only a desk. It was never only a desk.